Hello everyone, my name is Rabea and I'm here on behalf of Victory Amplifiers to show you the brand new MK Clean hand-wired amplifier from Victory. First thing I'll say is that the MK series of amplifiers are completely hand-built and hand-wired point to point, which means you're getting the best quality that we can possibly offer from Victory, and you can tell that just by the way it sounds. I'm a huge fan of these amplifiers and it was a great honor to be involved in the design process of both the MK Clean and the MK Overdrive. So the MK Clean very much tells you what it does in its name. It's a high headroom clean amplifier of, as far as I'm concerned, the highest quality boutique style cleans. The inspiration behind this amplifier, the easiest way to describe it would be in the realm of two-rock, that sort of super high headroom clean that really punches you in the chest when you dig in. It feels like there is no limit to the headroom of the amplifier, or at least to the point that you turn it up so loud that it's too loud, because there really is a lot of headroom and it feels incredibly dynamic to play. So the MK Clean, as I mentioned before, is hand-built and hand-wired. It's a clean amplifier, although it does give you a little bit of bite when you need it. It's a single-channel clean amplifier with a spring reverb, 3-band EQ, and a few different switches that allow us to change the sort of tone and the voice of the amplifier itself. We've got a voice switch, which essentially pushes the mids forward. Doesn't so much feel like a Tube Screamer style mid boost, but it certainly gives a nice mid hump in the front of the amplifier that allows you to cut through the mix a little bit more. We also have a bright switch, which certainly adds a lovely sparkle to the top of the guitar tone. Really useful if you're playing humbuckers or hollow body guitars or anything like that that feels a little bit less bright compared to something such as a single coil. And then we have a bass shift, which just gives a little bit more low-end support to the overall tone and generally gives you that resonant bump that you'd be looking for in certain situations. And it also kind of changes the response of the amp somewhat. We have a reverb in level and out level. So these two you can dial in depending on the style and tone of the reverb that you'd like. Gives you a little bit more response, a bit more decay. It's sort of a different feel overall to the reverb and how it reacts to the way you play. So it's really useful to have those on the front panel. And we also have a presence control, which just allows you to get a little bit more top end out of the overall tone of the amplifier. That in conjunction with the bright switch means you can really get a lot of rich top end harmonic content from the tone of the amplifier as well. So in this video, I'm going to go through a few different tones using a single coil loaded guitar, go through some of the different voice switches so you can hear how the amp reacts. It's also worth pointing out that the amplifier takes pedals really well. So we've got a few different pedals on the ground, an overdrive, a fuzz, and we've also got an effects loop with this amplifier, which we've added some delay to as well. So I hope you enjoyed some of the guitar tones that you heard just now. I just want to say that it's really enjoyable to be involved in the design process of this amplifier as well as many others in the Victory range. But I have to say, when it came to looking at the MK Clean and how we were going to achieve the type of amp and tone that we wanted, it felt like a tall order. But of course, Martin Kidd, being the amazing amp designer, engineer that he is, it was just a challenge he was willing to accept and overcome. So when we had a chance to sit down together in the R&D department at Victory, we all sat around listening to reference amplifiers, other amplifiers that we liked, and also a bunch of prototype amps that Martin had already designed. And it was a case of just really picking out the ones we liked the most in terms of the overall feel and response. It's also worth saying that at least the people testing the amplifiers all have different tastes of the kind of clean amp they like. My taste in clean tone and the way it responds to my playing is very different to Pete, who also works on the R&D team with Victory. And it was really interesting collaborating with Victory, with Pete, with Martin, to try and achieve the overall kind of clean amplifier that we thought, everyone would like, including anyone that's going to pick one of these up. And I also have some interesting stories regarding the spring reverb in the amplifier. As you know, a spring reverb is a tank that's situated inside the amplifier that has physical springs inside it. It's all plugged into the amp itself and it reacts to the signal that it's being given. The springs vibrate, giving you that reverberated sound. When we were doing the design of this amplifier, we had, I believe, 3, maybe 4 different spring reverb tanks to try, because there are different brands of spring reverb tank, different models, and we would plug each one in, play, have a listen, which one do we like? One of them sounded really great, but the decay was too short. One of them sounded okay, quite bright. The decay was the right length. One of them had a really long decay and the tone was just perfect. So we felt, how do we overcome this challenge? Because there are only so many manufacturers of spring reverb tanks, so it became a bit of a, were we going to compromise somewhere on this? How were we going to overcome finding the perfect spring reverb? And I had this thought, I'm not an engineer of guitar amplifiers. I don't understand the inner workings of a guitar amp. I just know what I like to listen to. I turned to Martin and said, Martin, what do you think it would do if we turned the spring reverb tank the other way around? We all sort of looked and, I don't really know what would happen. Let's try. We had the spring reverb tank sat on top of the amp. We flipped it the other way around. Bearing in mind this is the tank with the long decay, but the right tone. And as soon as we flipped it the other way around, the decay shortened and the tone was perfect. And we all sat around and went, how does that even work? How do you explain this? None of us could understand other than gravity was changing the direction of the springs and it was doing something to the sound of the reverb. And we all thought, wow, that's really interesting. But now we have a new challenge. How do we mount the spring reverb tank upside down inside the amplifier? And so we set Martin on a new challenge, which involved having to work out how to get the little amount of noise. By turning the spring reverb tank upside down, it gave more noise to the amp. So he had to overcome that challenge as well as mounting it properly. But he did the job. And it sounds fantastic, but I thought that was an interesting story to tell you about some of the weird things that happen when designing amplifiers. Overall, I'm incredibly proud to have been a part of the design of the MK series, and I think if you get one of these amplifiers, you'll be addicted to how good it feels to play. It's very comfortable, very rewarding, it fills the room, and it sounds fantastic. With the MK Clean amplifier, we also have a matching cabinet which features an Alnico Gold 12-inch speaker inside. It's an open back cabinet giving you a nice amount of warm low end. The reason that we chose an Alnico Gold was, as some of you know, it's really important to choose the right speaker for your amplifier, as it will have a huge influence over the sound of the amp and the way it feels to play. The reason we went for Alnico Gold was we thought it had a really rich tonal response, really lovely mid-range, a nice smooth top end, which was really good for overdrive, as well as, you know, whatever other pedals you might put in front of it. And the warm low end and thick response overall gave us a really rewarding sound when using the Alnico Gold with the MK Clean. We also featured the same speaker in the MK Overdrive as well, because it works perfectly just as well for overdrive tones as it does for clean tones. As you know, with a tube amplifier, it's imperative that you use a speaker cabinet. The amplifier needs a load to go into, otherwise you'll damage the amplifier. So whether or not you use a speaker cabinet or something like a load box, it's just important that the amplifier is given the right load so that it can work properly. Speaker cabinets have a huge impact on the overall tone of the amp, so it's important that you find a speaker cab that works for you. There's no rule on what speaker to use for an amplifier like this, but we've went ahead and decided that the Alnico Gold was the best pairing for this amp. However, you might choose something different. So you may have noticed on the front panel we have volume and master volume. In an amplifier like this, when I mentioned before a high headroom clean amplifier, what that essentially means is that we have a lot of scope in terms of volume before the amplifier signal starts to break up and give us overdrive or gain, so to speak. The way I like to think of volume and master volume is the lower the volume on the channel, the more dynamic range it's going to have. So you'll be able to play very lightly, very heavily, and it will stay pristine. But because you lower the volume here, we don't want to lose signal completely, so we counteract that by boosting the master volume. That way, we can have a very high dynamic range signal with the volume all the way down or very much lower, but we can compensate by having the master volume up really high. Alternatively, if I wanted more compression from the signal, if I wanted to play with a little bit more power, so to speak, if you want a little bit more punch out of the overall signal, you would boost the input volume and you would lower the master volume to compensate for the increase in volume. By having the input volume higher, you'll find there's a bit of compression comes from the signal, a little bit more crunch happens the harder you play. This is also, if you put an overdrive in front of it, it's going to gel differently with the tone of the amp compared to having the input volume lower. And it's really just a case of taste, personal taste. Me, I like to have the volume quite high and the master volume quite low. That way I can get a nice amount of support underneath the style of clean playing I like to do. As I mentioned before with the MK Overdrive, these amplifiers upon order are completely customizable visually. As you can see here, we've gone for a British racing green, which I think looks really classy, along with the pepper pot grille, especially with the matching cab, and you can see we've got brown leather corner pieces and handle, and we've got the white faceplate. I just think it's a very classy look, but of course you can design yours visually however you want. You could choose a bright green leather, bright red, black faceplate, really up to you. But that's one of the things that we wanted to offer people when purchasing such an incredible amplifier. We think it's important that you also have input on how you want it to look. So I hope you enjoyed the sounds of the MK Clean, and you can agree with me, it's a fantastic sounding amplifier. If you want to find out anything else about the MK Clean or the MK Overdrive, please visit Musicians Club. Thank you for watching.